Can you believe it? The last day of September has arrived. October is tomorrow. Friday, we've got Countdown to Craziness, which means one thing. Duke basketball is almost here.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us today on this Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we'll dive into this Duke basketball team with our pal Isaac Trotter of CBS Sports and 247. We'll talk all things X's and O's with Duke ahead of a very exciting season here in 2025-2026 for Jon Scheyer and company. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You can watch us each and every day on YouTube as well. Like our videos, share them with a friend, and continue to spread the word about what we're doing with Locked On Blue Devils. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on X at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. So without further ado, we bring him on into the show. Our good friend Isaac Trotter is back with us once again. Very good to see you, sir. Feels like just yesterday we were talking the heartbreaking Final Four loss for the Duke team, and now before you know it, they're already practicing and a new season has arrived, man. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Yeah, the practice season starts earlier than ever. The calendar, I feel like, is really conducive for us to now we get to start actually seeing teams again. You know, I think we spent all offseason like talking about what teams will look like. And in 3 weeks, we kind of get to see what teams actually look like, especially with some of these exhibitions. You know, sometimes I wish some of these games actually counted, but great exhibitions coming around the corner, less than 3 weeks, 3 weeks away from finally starting to see what these rotations will look like. And it's going to be really, really fun.
Without a doubt. I mean, we got to dive into all those things because we've got Countdown to Craziness coming up on Friday. Duke's at their fun blue-white event that they do every single season. Next week is ACC Media Days, and then before you know it, it's exhibition games against UCF and Tennessee. A lot of people looking at this roster for Jon Scheyer, and I think you start with the returners. As we've talked about previously, Isaac, it's a team that did not have a single scholarship player enter the transfer portal. Pretty impressive. You did lose the entire starting five because they were all drafted. That's a tip in the cap to what Duke basketball is doing. But I love to hear that everybody made the decision that could. I want to come back and I want to play for Duke. I don't want to test the transfer portal.
Yeah, it was smart, I think, from Jon Scheyer's perspective, just to understand like your team at a high level. I think we talked about it before earlier this summer of like, hey, he's been very flexible and moldable of how he wants to build his rosters. You know, 2 years ago or the year before, last offseason when Cooper's coming in, hey, we got to go in the portal. We got to get some older guys. We got to fit some exact archetypes that we're trying to build out this rotation because we think we can win a title. You know, this year, I think their best path to winning a title was retention. And so to get Maliq Brown back, to get Isaiah Evans back, to get, you know, Patrick Ngongba back, like Caleb Foster, Darren Harris, like those are all enormous pieces because like, yeah, maybe they didn't put up huge counting stats last year, but they're probably more talented than some of the guys that they could have gotten in the portal who did put up better counting stats. So I think retention was the best way to build this team. And, you know, honestly, when I first think about Duke this year, I just think this front court's going to smash. And I think the ability to get Ngongba back, the ability to get Brown back, and then you add that to Cam Boozer, that's the sell with this team is that this front court could be one of the elite units in college basketball, maybe a top 3 or 4 unit in the sport.
Well, we're going to repeat ourselves, and rightfully so. You got 5 returners for the squad, 5 freshmen, 10 players really on scholarship for the Duke team. But in the entire roster, everybody is 6'5" and taller once again.
Yeah, positional size. That's their thing. That's what they do. Yeah, you're right. I think the thing I keep going back to is like the weak link theory with this, which is like in basketball, especially on defense. It's like, who's your weak link defensively? And if our weak link doesn't stink, we're going to have a better advantage than everybody else. And I think when you look at this Duke roster, who's the weak link defensively? I think Isaiah Evans has to prove himself on that end. Like Cayden Boozer's going to have to prove himself at that end at the high major ranks. I think he's going to be able to guard.
Right.
But like, there's Darren Harris, when he gets in, is going to probably get tested. But like when you have this much positional size and you have so many big guards and so many big, strong wings and enough depth in that front court, your weak link defensively is a whole lot better than other people's weak link. And that gives Duke, I think, a chance to have a pretty good defense. I don't know if they're going to have an elite level defense like they had last year, but I think the floor for this group is really, really high because of the positional size and having, 6'4", 6'5" all the way across the board.
Well, absolutely take it. I mean, when you've got the size, it's such an advantage. It's fun to say you've got the tallest team in America. You exit guys like Cooper Flagg, like Kaman Malawach, who's adding to your height, and yet Duke's still in a position where they're one of the tallest teams. You mentioned Isaiah Evans. That's where I want to shift here. Last season, there were moments early in the year where he wasn't playing hardly at all. He explodes in that first half against Auburn, making 6 3-point shots, helps Duke come back and win that basketball game. One of the reasons he wasn't able to get on the floor early on, Jon Scheyer was talking about, was the defense. That, along with the shooting that Duke will get out of Isaiah Evans, more playmaking this year, feels like he's got all the tools to be one of the big breakout stars in the conference, maybe even greater than that in the country.
Yeah, his profile just screams breakout. It just like, you're going to probably get him up to 25, 26 minutes. The off movement shooting is going to be there. They run really good actions for him. And also just like the way that this team is built, I think, Ngongba is a really, really good passer. Maliq Brown is a really, really good passer. Cameron Boozer, I really trust his playmaking knack. I would throw Cayden Boozer in there as a terrific, like, set the table type of guy. Duke needs a play finisher, especially on that perimeter. And that's where Evans, I think, can really saddle in to that second, maybe number 2 offensive role behind Cameron Boozer. And maybe he is a guy that's 13, 14 a game. And it's not that complicated to get to 13 or 14 a game. Like it's a few threes for him. Can you get out in transition? Can you attack a few long closeouts, get to the free throw line? Like your path to get to 13 points a game isn't all that complicated. I think if he keeps it simple and doesn't try to do too much, buys in as a cutter, continues to do what he's doing as a shooter, just punishing teams who, make a mistake and leave him open, he's got a chance to have a really big year. And you're right. Like the defense, the playmaking, the ability to handle, if that continues to improve, he's going to be an NBA player next year.
In your stories, I know you're always talking about shot diet, and you look at Isaiah Evans, it's a number that I've said all the time. Every dayers are probably sick of it by now when they listen to the show, but 82% of this guy's shot attempts were 3-pointers a season ago. That's what excites me most, is he was shooting those shots very efficiently, but there wasn't much else. You could think of 5 or 6 dunks that he had on the year, because, again, everybody is huge for Duke. They've got a lot of athleticism there, but I'm just excited to see what more he can show to the offensive game. And as you're mentioning, if he does slot in as a 13, 14-point a game scorer, not all of that has to be those 3-point looks. There are going to be plenty of other ways for him to score and improve that shot diet.
Especially with just how teams are going to guard him. I think that, they're going to try to, hook and trail defenders off the ball. Like they're going to be all over him. They're going to try to be really physical with him. I think especially older teams are going to try to really beat him up. And, he's got to learn how to, come off of those pin downs and be able to get to the middle of the floor and make plays. Like, can he add a float game? Can he continue to pressure the basket, to pressure the rim off the bounce, taking 1-2 extra dribbles, playing off of 2 feet? I think Con Knipple did that expertly last year. His ability, he's a shooter, but the gravity of him as a shooter, he was able to weaponize for some of those drives. He's making defenders off balance. He's getting 2 feet in the paint. He's playing off 2 shot fakes, getting to the free throw line. Some of those things, I think if Evans adds to his game, which I think he has it, he just didn't necessarily get a chance to show it at times last year with a loaded roster. If he can add a few of those things and really lock in, he could be, a really, really important player. And then if you could toss in some extra playmaking off of that, it means you're just so much more dangerous, because know he's drawing defenders. And if he can just find a way to just make the simple reads, that means it's going to be very, very hard to take him off the floor. Because I think Duke's shooting is going to be a question early. There's going to be some question marks about how well this team can shoot. So Evans is going to have to play a lot. And if he can round out the rough edges of his game, the sky's the limit for this dude.
Duke fans, what I'm hearing is to buy stock. This is high praise for Isaiah Evans going into the upcoming season. That excites me a whole lot. We've got other guys on the roster that are poised for big seasons for the Duke basketball team. We'll start to break those down here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, the company formerly known as Open Phone. It's a same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new company name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. You can see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing phone numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. This company is a game changer. Go check it out right now. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, we keep going. Isaac Trotter here with us today talking about the Duke basketball team ahead of a big season for Jon Scheyer, fresh off the Final Four. Every year he's been the head coach, Duke has advanced one round or two further in the NCAA tournament from around a 32 exit in year one, lost in the Elite Eight to NC State a few seasons ago, fresh off a Final Four run. We'll see if this is the group to finally bring the 6th national championship there to Durham. There are questions, though, right now in the preseason, Isaac, that kind of need to be ironed out a little bit. We've talked clearly about the talent, but I know recently you've been writing about who's kind of PG1, who's the lead guard for this team. You've got a junior and Caleb Foster, and then here's this incoming freshman in Cayden Boozer.
It's a good problem to have, but yeah, I think it's something that needs to get ironed out. I think it can be flexible and fluid throughout the year. I think Cayden is probably the closest thing to traditional point guard. And he walks on the floor trying to make others better, and that's a compliment. I really do trust him to make winning plays for his team on both ends. I think he has good feel for the game as a driver. I still think, though, there are some questions about if he can punish drop coverage effectively. And that's the thing I kind of go back to, like with the shooting concerns. It's like if you have Cayden Boozer on the floor and then you have Maliq Brown or Patrick Ngongba on the floor at the 5 who aren't really floor stretchers. And then you have Dame Sarr on the floor who his 3 is gone, hit or miss at times, right? Like he has to still prove himself as a shooter. Could that be a little bit of a hindrance for this offense? I think it could be, right? Like that's a feasible outcome there. That's where Caleb Foster comes into play, where he's somebody that, like, I think he walks on the floor, unlike Cayden, where he walks on the floor trying to score. And I love his change of pace. Some of his change of pace drives, I think, will really help this group. I think he's a guy that, especially against drop coverage and pick and rolls, like if you don't go over the top of screens, he's going to step back and shoot threes. So it's a fascinating development there. I also do think that Sarr, his development, how ready he is to play, really does impact this race as well. Because if say Sarr is just not up to par and they need something to work, like it's not really working, I think you could easily see in a scenario where Cayden's at the 1, Caleb Foster shifts over to playing the 2, and Isaiah Evans is at the 3, and Sarr comes off the bench. Like that's very feasible. Like that's not crazy. So it's a good problem to have. You have a lot of depth here. But whoever Duke's point guard is at the end of games early in the season will be very, very telling to me about who has earned the trust from this coaching staff. And I think it will evolve over the year, especially as Cayden gets up to speed with the college game.
Yeah, so that being said, it feels like Caleb Foster is the guy early on in the season to get that role.
I think he is. And, I just think his defense is ahead of the curve, too, a little bit. When I was watching him at the Final Four, like you just get he has some nasty to him on the ball defensively. And I think that he can be one of the better perimeter defenders on this group. Then you add the shot making, which again, I think you just need another couple proven 3-point shooters for this offense to really hum at the level that Jon Scheyer wants it to. And so the shooting, the defense, the veterans age, the driving, I think I'm leaning towards Caleb Foster being that guy, and then Cayden will certainly mix in with 18 to 20 minutes at minimum off the bench.
Associate head coach Chris Carrawell in the local media day last week talked about Caleb Foster looks like a gladiator with the work he's put in this offseason. Said he's got muscles popping out of his neck now, and I've kind of seen that early as well. Just the strength he's added to his game. So kind of curious to see how all of that develops for him.
And he already plays strong. He already plays a strong style of basketball. So Con Knippel has reiterated that in multiple interviews this year. Like, hey, don't sell your stock on Caleb Foster. Like, we think he's going to be a good player. I think he gets the first crack at this thing, and then you go from there.
Tell me a little bit more about this front court depth, because Patrick Ngongba II, we saw him come on late throughout the season. Really impressed with his soft hands and the touch that he's got around the rim. But obviously you're going from big Kaman Maliq, who's this top 10 pick on the floor. Not as many opportunities for Ngongba. And then Maliq Brown, we know that he had the injury issues with his shoulders last season. Learned last week that he recently had a minor scope in his knee, so he's getting that cleaned up before he's ready to go. But beyond that, the returning pieces in the front court, you got to like. Just the injury history might make you a little worrisome.
Yeah, and I'm really bullish on this front court. I think there's a world where Ngongba is the second best player on this team. Cameron Boozer's obviously, I think, the alpha, but I think Ngongba really checks off a ton of boxes for me. He's huge. He's got great soft hands. I think his interior finishing is going to be high level. I think you could run offense through him in the low post or at the top of the key. Can he put it on the deck a little bit more? I think that's certainly in the range of potential outcomes. We've talked a lot about Isaiah Evans' breakout case. I think Ngongba, like, his path to being a double-digit guy is really, really high. He just screams breakout too. So I think he is going to be a really, really important piece. And he's so different than Kaman, because Kaman is just like his physical tools are just different. Like, he just walks into a room and you're just like, oh my God, that guy is big. Ngongba, I think, is actually more functional offensively than what Kaman did. Kaman was like a lob threat, but you didn't really trust him to go over each shoulder and kind of punish teams on the low block. I think Ngongba can. And I think Ngongba is somebody that Duke could run some stuff through. I love the idea of some like throwback high-low actions that they could run with Cam Boozer and Ngongba together. Both those guys can pass. Both those guys can dribble. Like, it's fun. It's fun. And then the Maliq Brown injury news is frustrating. He's somebody that just feels like he just can't get a break.
Yeah.
Just every year it feels like there's something new with him. But I think we also do know the deal. He's not going to need a ton of practice time to get up to speed. He already knows the offense. You already know what you're getting from him defensively as a deflections machine. The playmaking has certainly helped. And don't forget, late in the season last year, I thought he earned some trust with his three ball. And if that has continued to progress a little bit, assuming the shoulders can stay healthy, because having a healthy shoulder usually needs to be helpful to shoot threes. If that can stay up to par, like, he could be somebody who could give you a little bit of floor stretching. And then let's not forget about Hemenia too. Yeah. Like, I think he will help this team a lot. I really do. Whether that's at the 4, whether that's at the 3, they'll use him and they'll throw him around in different lineups. But I think Hemenia is going to really, really help this team, because that intersection of pass, dribble, shoot, high IQ, like, if you like college basketball, you watch a lot of UConn, like Alex Karaban, like, is somebody that a familiar name, right? Like, when I watch Hemenia, I'm like, how much Alex Karaban tape has this guy watched? Because it seems like a lot.
Yeah, with Nick in particular, the coaching staff talked about he was late arriving because he was playing for the U19 team at the World Cup in Switzerland, helps USA win gold, and then now he's finally back in the mix for this team moving forward. You look at that last spot, kind of when people start to project the starting 5 for this team. In the backcourt, you've got Foster and Evans. In the front court, you've got Boozer and then Ngongba, like we're talking about. And in some ways, it feels like a toss-up between Dame Sarr and Nick Hemenia. The coaching staff early on feels like every day they're changing their mind as to who that could be. Sounds like a good problem to have when you're looking at a pair of freshmen who might do a little bit differently things out there, but all in all, add to a really good product.
It's a first world problem when you have two guys like this, because I think both these dudes would probably start for 85% of other high majors. And, I'm putting Sarr there in my hypothetical starting lineup. I think Sarr makes the most sense just because I really like his cutting. Yeah. I think he is this year. I think we talked about it. Like, I think he is this year's version of Sion James, where he's just a really, really good defensive player, connective piece offensively. You can use him as a cutter, as a screener, as a handler.
Love to hear that.
That's the role, I think, for him. Sion is obviously a veteran and was like really, really good at what he did as a high level role player. Sarr has some work to do, right? Because he's still young, but the physical tools are very, very impressive. So I just put him there just because I think the defense is going to be ahead of the curve. But you're right. Like, Hemenia is going to play a lot. I just have a hard time seeing them like not find 20 minutes a game for him, because again, like I talked about earlier, like an Alex Karaban, like he fits with everybody. Yeah. There's nobody on this team that you can't play Hemenia with. Like, he's going to cut, he's going to pass, he's going to shoot. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. He's going to guard. Like, he helps you. And I wouldn't overlook, like, he didn't play a ton at the World Cup, and I don't think that's a real indictment on him. I think it was more just like, hey, Koa Pete's awesome. And then that was like kind of the situation. So I wouldn't think that like that's a big shot at him. Now, granted, he could run in the similar thing here where, hey, Cam Boozer just awesome and Sarr's awesome, and you're kind of left out. But that's what you get when you choose to go to Duke and join one of the most talented rosters in the sport.
What a fun squad it's going to be. And we know we've talked about this non-conference schedule that they've got early in the year, and then you're in the ACC. And the goal, hopefully, is that this team has gotten, or the rest of the conference has gotten better to give you some more competitive games. So we'll start to dive into that as we'll wrap up after we take one final timeout here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today, of course, is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the absolute best. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has offers that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put $5 down, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Right now, each and every week in the NFL, from Thursday Night Football to a full slate on Sunday, Monday Night Football as well. They've got amazing games, player props, live builds that you can make during the game, and so much more. Also, as we take a look at some new FanDuel odds that have been placed in the future bets department, let's talk a little basketball. Right now, Duke the favorites to win the ACC at plus 160. Louisville right behind him at plus 220. UNC, NC State, and UVA round out the top five. Go get in on the action with FanDuel futures bets and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com or download the free FanDuel app today to get started. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, welcome back into the show. We've got Isaac Trotter here from 247 Sports talking about the Duke basketball squad as they've got the daunting non-conference schedule that we've talked about before. We were able to touch on these things throughout the course of the summer. First game of the year for Duke is against Texas. So power conference opponent right out of the gates. I think in my head, Isaac, when I remind myself that, hey, you're doing the same thing in these exhibition games, it's not as daunting as it would have been in previous years.
What do you mean by that?
Just in terms of, typically when you build a schedule, we've seen some of your bye games that you would have early on in the season. Here you are, a game against Texas right out of the gates. I go back to what Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett, their first game was against Kentucky, but exhibition games that Duke had that year were against Division II and Division III seasons. So going into the year, you're like, oh my gosh, Kentucky right out of the gates. This is just a different era that we're now in.
Oh, I got you. No, I totally see what you're saying now and I think it speaks to there's no downside to playing these games. Okay, you lose one. Big
right.
Deal. That doesn't even matter anymore. Because you have a chance to buff up your resume and continue. If you go 500 against the best awesome teams you play in non-conference play, big deal. You're a 3 seed still, right? You still have a chance to do what you need to do. But you're right. I love it. I love it. Texas is an interesting, an interesting first real game because they're so old. Their starting lineup is Jordan Pope, senior. Simeon Wilcher's probably a third-year guy now out of St. John's, transfer from St. John's of Texas. Tremone Mark, fifth-year guy. Dalen Swain, veteran. Cam Eide, veteran. They have 7 of their top 8 rotation players, I think, or 8 of their top 9 are going to be upperclassmen. So for a young team like Duke, you're going to get tested right away. Now, granted, this is a very new look team, just like you as well. So both teams are kind of figuring out, hey, what are we good at? What is our strengths? How do we fit together? All of these different things. Sean Miller is a very, very good coach, the first-year coach at Texas, but Duke will walk into that game having probably 2 or 3 of the best players on the floor. Right. Texas is a decent team, but they don't have that superstar power at the top of it. And that Duke front line should have every opportunity to do what it needs to do in that against the Texas front line. That's, Dalen Swain, Modest Fakaitis. It's not anything necessarily to write home about yet.
And it's Texas is just the starting point when we look at this non-conference schedule that's got the likes of Kansas and Michigan State and Arkansas, Michigan, so many heavy hitters.
Florida, right?
Florida, yeah, in the ACC SEC Challenge, the reigning Natty champ. So it's crazy to think about that non-con schedule as a whole that Duke has built, but that can truly only benefit them in the end.
It really can. And, let's go team by team here of like different things that you can learn. Okay, when you play Texas Tech, I think that's maybe one of the best offenses in college basketball. And you're going to learn a lot about Cam Boozer's defense in that game because he's probably going to have to guard JT Toppin. Okay, Michigan State. Arguably, like, their personnel is a little down this year offensively because they lost Jace Richardson, who was a first-round pick. They lose Jaden Akins, who is a 4-year starter type of deal for them. Trey Holloman transferred to NC State. But they still have, like, one of the best defensive units in the group. So, like, if your offense has any kinks in the armor, like, it's going to be showcased. Florida, great front court, maybe the best in the country. They're going to try to crush you on the glass. So Duke can play big. Arkansas, Darius Acuff can ball. They have great retention, too. Like, they have Carter Knox coming back. Like, that's a very high, potent NBA type of filled game. So, like, and then Darren Peterson might be the best player that Duke plays against this year. So, like, you're going to get to all of these different little looks at all of these different teams. Michigan State is so good defensively. Arkansas has the star power. Kansas has the NBA lead guard. So how's your point of attack defense? Like, all of these different things will be tested, and you'll be so prepared because you're playing such different styles. Like, the way that Arkansas is going to play this year is completely opposite of the way that Kansas will play this year. And if your defense really wants to get different tests, this is why you put a schedule like this together, because you're going to have to play different ways to win different games, just like you will in March. And you have to find a way to win 6 straight, and sometimes, 6 different ways.
See, that's why I bring you on, because I feel wiser after because that's such a good point, that you can learn so many different things as checkpoints, so that then when you're reflecting at the end of the year, you get into those NCAA tournament scenarios, you can kind of remind, this is what we experienced in this non-conference game. So many of them also were in neutral sites. It's going to be in the environment that you're playing in as well once you get to that setting. I know that Jon Scheyer loved the Illinois game in the middle of ACC play last season for Duke. That's Michigan this year in February. They'll play that game in Washington, D.C. It's always fun nowadays to think about, preparing yourself for where you want to be a month from now in that second weekend, playing in a neutral site against a pretty good team.
I didn't even touch on Michigan. Elliot Cadeau bounced back. Like, that's another thing too. Like, you get to see Elliot again, but like, again, Michigan, maybe they have the best front court in college basketball. So I think, like, it's just so fun, like, to think about like what the different lineup combinations that you could use against a team like Michigan. Like, it's fun because like Florida, Michigan, and Duke, I would say, are the best 3 front courts in my estimation, and Texas Tech. Those would be the best 4. All 3 of those teams are on Duke's schedule. So like, that's kind of shows you kind of where you're at. And again, it really does speak to, I think, non-conference play and who you want to play. It says a lot about like how good you think your team is. Jon Scheyer thinks this team is going to be very, very good. And unlike last year, I do think that this team has a few more flaws that will get shown a little bit earlier. Right. I don't think this team is going to run roughshod through the ACC or run roughshod through non-conference play. Like, there's going to be some real close games, and I think they'll be very, very battle tested because of a schedule that you put together. Like, you're kind of like setting up a young team to fail, and that's a good thing, because like, failure in non-conference play doesn't hurt you in the long run. Yeah, learning to fail is a good thing at the end of the day, when you can the next time around apply what you need to not fail in the big test that Duke will have later on in the year. All right, before we go, we've highlighted the ACC slate just a little bit for Duke. They've got North Carolina and Louisville twice. Play every team in the conference except Miami. That's a miss by the conference to not give us that matchup there. Duke goes to California for the first time to play Cal and Stanford since they've joined the league. Pretty crazy how all this shaped up for Duke. And again, just the miss to not have Miami. Yeah, gotta go play Cal and Stanford, but Lord forbid they play Miami to get a Jay Luka. I don't get it. I thought that was wild, but yeah, no, interesting. I think this year, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think the ACC will be better. How much better? We'll see. And it really does come down to these new coaches. Virginia, I think, did a really, really good job of hiring Ryan Odom. They've poured money into that program. The roster looks like top 25-ish, right? I didn't have them on my top 25, but they're right there in that top 30-ish range. NC State, with what they've done with Will Wade, that's a top 25 caliber roster right there. So you throw in what Louisville has done, how much better they're going to look. That North Carolina is talented and probably going to be in that mix. For me, it's Duke, it's Carolina, it's NC State, it's Virginia at the top of the ACC right now. We'll kind of see who else can play in there. But like, I think the ACC is a little bit better than what it was in the past. And that will I think that will help in the long run because then you don't have quite as many like pitfalls in conference play. Like Duke will be favored to win a bunch of some of these games, but even SMU, I think SMU is a sneaky decent team this year. I think, Miami, like if you see them in the ACC tournament, that's a sneaky decent team this year. Like Notre Dame and Syracuse, as of now, they're healthy, they're talented, they're more talented than ever before. I think we're going to see a league where like you might have, like when you go read those bubble watches in mid-February, you might have 8 or 9 ACC teams that have a chance to make the tournament, which you couldn't say, last year at this time.
Yeah, I just listened to the teams that you pulled out as highlights, and pretty fitting that we just got our friends at FanDuel to give us the futures odds for conference.
Oh, those are out.
ACC. Yeah, and here we are at the top. It's Duke, it's Louisville, UNC, NC State, UVA. You just nailed it, man. With kind of the teams right there at the top. So
I got those right. Yeah, those feel like the top 5, right? Like that feels like the top 5 there. And I would be surprised if anybody else really cracks into that top 5. Maybe SMU, but like again, like I'm saying, like those other 5 rosters just feel a little bit different than the rest.
No doubt. All right. So, Isaac, this has been awesome, man. Getting set for basketball. Like we said, it's Countdown to Craziness on Friday. Then we're into the exhibition games. Countdown to Craziness is fitting for all the work that you've got going on right now there at CBS Sports. Tell us a little bit about your work. Maybe shout out a teammate or two that's got good coverage for Duke that our fans should look out for and all those things, man.
Yeah, we have great stuff coming. Eric Bossy, Travis Branham, Brandon Jenkins, who's been on the show here before. They do a great job covering recruiting. So big weekend recruiting coming up this week. So check out 24/7 Sports for that. And then our CBS Sports ACC previews will be right around the corner, probably middle of October, I think is kind of what we're doing. So we're trying to tabulate our votes right now. Some heated debates on whether Louisville or Duke should be number 1 in the league. So it should be fun.
All right, man. Thanks for the time today. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Isaac Trotter joining us here on our show, and that's going to do it for Locked On Blue Devils here today. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us here today on the program. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast as well. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you, and good day.